have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA, where the big LGBT news keeps coming. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, and yes, it does. You may have thought it was all over. Well, maybe it's all over this week with the headlines, but we'll bring you up to date on what's going on.
Starting with the fact that the United States military has begun the process of ending the ban on transgender service members.
Wow, that was fast. And the Boy Scouts are ending their blanket ban on gay adults in scouting as leaders or managers. But they are going to continue to allow troops sponsored by anti-gay religious organizations to continue to discriminate.
At the big party that Freedom to Marry threw, celebrating the big marriage win at the Supreme Court, Vice President Joe Biden gave a very moving speech.
We're going to show you a significant part of that. U.S. Senate Republicans have not gotten the memo yet. They shot down an anti-bullying bill for LGBT students in schools.
There are still some government officials resisting legal same-sex marriages.
But some of them are resigning, and that's a good thing. Those anti-gay bakers who wouldn't sell a wedding cake to a gay couple will tell you the real reason they were fined $135,000.
The Pope continues to speak in riddles on matters relating to LGBT people. He just can't spit it out.
Terrible news from Missouri. Michael Johnson, 23 years old, was sentenced to 30.5 years in prison for having sex without disclosing his HIV-positive status. This is consensual, unprotected sex.
He could have raped and murdered and gotten less.
Literally.
Yep.
But some, at least, are condemning the sentence as barbaric.
And, you know, we think we've got a good thing going here at Gay USA, and we'd like to appeal to you to extend the reach of the show by telling your friends about it. If you're on our email list, if you write to me at andyhum@AOL, forward that to your friends. Get it out there so more people can learn about all these things and we can get this all over with.
They can go directly to our Facebook page, our Gay USA Facebook page, and watch the show every week there.
Or go to our website where you can listen to our podcast and get a direct link to video every week. So please.
GayUSATV.org.
Help us out. Thank you.
If we're going to refer them to the website, we should tell them what the address is.
Absolutely. We have it up on the screen there, too, GayUSATV.org. But for you podcast listeners, that's GayUSATV.org.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, well, let's start with the news. And frankly, I was astonished at this first headline that the Defense Department has suddenly announced that they're moving to allow open service by transgender service members.
Well, I'm a regular viewer of the Gay USA show, and there were hints of this coming. So what the Secretary of Defense, Ashton Carter is his name?
Yes. Ash.
Ash Carter. What he's done is said we've got a 6-month plan to explore the lifting of the ban, although leaning toward, basically I want to do it, but let's see how we're going to do it. And in the meantime...
I think he was a little more definite than that.
Yes. And in the meantime, transgender service members will not be thrown out of the military.
Exactly.
But if you are transgender and you're trying to get into the military, not yet.
If you were to guess, I'll bet you know the answer to this. I'm turning this into a game show. How many transgender people would you say are currently serving in the United States Armed Forces?
I did see that estimate. I didn't write it down. Why don't you tell us, Ann?
15,000 plus. So that's a significant number. This is not just 2 or 3 people hiding among the ranks. This is a large number of people who are now going to be liberated to live their lives openly, just as gay, lesbian, and bisexual people were liberated at the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell a few years ago.
It's huge. All the advocacy groups are on board with this, from what I can tell.
Sure. One of the most significant groups in promoting this change is a group called Sparta, service members. I'm going to
Sparta.
Sparta.
S-P-A-R-T-A.
And they have a long document on their website that is an FAQ, a frequently asked questions document that will explain all of this to you, whether you are in the armed forces, want to be in the armed forces, just want general information about this. If you go to spartapride.org, I'm sorry I didn't give this to our control room, spartapride.org, you can get the frequently asked questions about this policy change. It's enormous. This is huge.
And then there's a change in that paramilitary group, the Boy Scouts.
Not as huge.
Well, again, this was anticipated. The executive committee of the Boy Scouts ended the blanket ban on gay scoutmasters, but it still allows those troops that are sponsored by anti-gay religions to discriminate.
Which is a lot of them.
Yeah, well, yeah, because the Mormons and the Catholics are the big ones.
Yeah.
The National Executive Board votes on July 27th. Robert Gates, who heads the Boy Scouts now, you may remember him as our Secretary of Defense, he said he feared lawsuits over this. So the Human Rights Campaign is not happy about the fact that it's still going to exclude all these religious groups. And then there's Scott Walker.
Well, Scott Walker felt moved to make a statement about the new Boy Scout policy, and what he said was he supported the old policy of exclusion because it protected children and upheld the values of the Boy Scouts. So a Washington Post columnist had the insight to pose a question to the Scott Walker presidential campaign. So is what you're saying that gay men are a threat to young people, to boys? And the campaign had no comment or no response yet. It's unbelievable that they would
well, what
stoop to
other?
this.
I mean, what other reason were they holding on to? I mean, reason for not allowing gay scoutmasters?
Well, the appropriate analysis, of course, is that the people who were a threat to those Boy Scouts and the ones who have been convicted of pedophilia over the years are pedophiles.
Pedophiles and obviously hiding who they are to get into the Scouts and do this, as they did forever.
And contrarily,
out
gay people are fine, upstanding human beings, most of them, as Donald Trump would say.
I'm sure some of them are, he would say. I'm sure some of them are.
And are the people who should be leading scout troops. I think of the lesbian mom who was kicked out as a troop leader of Boy Scouts because she was a threat to the Boy Scouts?
Well, it was a threat to the structure of the Scouts, which is mostly run by Mormons and Catholics.
Yeah.
And that was the reason. So we're on our way there. We're not all the way there. Religion is still a stumbling block, as we will continue to discuss on this show.
Yeah.
And then there's the Congress. Senator Al Franken has been pushing this anti-bullying bill, the Student Non-Discrimination Act, for a long time. So he added it as an amendment to the No Child Left Behind bill. And to pass an amendment, he needed 60 votes on a cloture vote because, we don't have majority rule in the Senate. And it got 52 votes, all of the Democrats and 7 Republicans. But 45 Republicans voted against, so it did not pass. Senator Lamar Alexander, Republican from Tennessee, called it a federal intrusion into education. Now,
they're happy to intrude when it's on their list of moral values, but when it has anything to do with anything progressive, or certainly anything pro-LGBT, then suddenly it's an inappropriate intrusion.
In the height of the AIDS crisis, I remember when they voted 98-2 to ban the promotion of homosexuality.
Which was only ameliorated by, I think it was Ted Kennedy insisting that they then pass a law forbidding the promotion of heterosexuality,
yes.
too.
By the way, we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act this weekend. We had a big parade in New York, and that covered people with AIDS from the beginning, which was a great thing.
Right.
But Jesse Helms at the time, on the floor, I don't think it was an amendment, he said, I want to make clear that homosexuality is not a disability, something we could agree on. Anyway, that was back then.
Right,
and we should mention in this context that a bill was introduced to prevent the abuse of teens in residential programs, prohibiting anti-LGBT discrimination and prohibiting conversion therapy. So that's in the
That's also
works.
headed, what, for a 52-45 vote?
Well, I don't know. I don't know when they're going to get tired of opposing these things.
Me too. There's another bill introduced at the other end of the age spectrum by Senator Bennett of Colorado, Democrat, reintroducing the LGBT Elder Americans Act to identify us as a vulnerable population. And make more resources available.
And the Housing and Urban Development, HUD, has announced that they're going to take steps to eradicate discrimination versus older LGBT people in government-assisted housing.
We were a significant topic at the White House Conference on Aging.
They have designated older LGBT people as a vulnerable population, and it establishes a national resource center on LGBT aging. Thank you. As I say, as an older LGBT person.
All right, let's get back to marriage because we are not through with that yet. And we are not through with Scott Walker because as he made his announcement that he was running for president, he proceeded to announce some more conservative, less nuanced positions than he has taken in some recent years because he wants to win the Iowa caucuses, and Iowa's Republican primary voters or Republican caucus voters are notoriously conservative.
It was won by Rick Santorum last time.
And by Michelle Bachmann before then. So Scott Walker has announced that he now supports a constitutional amendment to allow states to re-ban same-sex marriage. And this is of great interest to his wife's cousin, who is a lesbian, whose wedding to her partner, Scott Walker, attended.
There they are. This was, I bet, well, a little bit ago when they did this.
Not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
Lesbian couple in the middle, Scott Walker on the right, Scott Walker's wife, Tonette, on the left. It is her cousin, who's one of the members
lesbians
of the couple.
are named Kathy Priem, and Shelley is Tonette Walker's cousin. But they say he's supportive of their relationship. No, he's not. He's trying to get you unmarried. And they are supporting his bid for president. They like his fiscal conservatism.
Shame.
Oh, man.
Really bad. All right, can we get to Joe Biden, or do we want to do some more headlines on marriage?
Yeah, why don't we do a few more headlines?
All right, well, our Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, Attorney General of the United States, says that all federal agencies will honor all same-sex marriages.
That includes the Veterans Administration, the Social Security Administration. These are very important, and a lot of people thought it was going to be a hard thing to do because the laws are written in a funny way that seemed to be excluding it, but no more.
And Senate Democrats, we'll see how far this gets, have introduced something called the Equal Dignity for Married Taxpayers Act, which is going to go through the tax code and change husband and wife references to spouse or partner or whatever is appropriate for a more diverse population of married people.
Yes. In Alabama, the Attorney General there, Luther, is it Strange? Yes. On Monday said that all state agencies will now grant the same rights and privileges to same-sex couples as for heterosexual married couples.
But and Kansas, we told you last week that Kansas, under the very anti-gay Governor Brownback, was begrudgingly giving some benefits to same-sex married couples, but withholding others. They now have announced they will allow same-sex married couples to file tax returns as married couples.
And he also says his executive order on religious freedom doesn't apply to local governments. So, I don't know. Anyway, in Arkansas, 3 lesbian couples are suing over the state's refusal to list 2 same-sex parents on a child's birth certificate.
And
this is going to be a big issue, folks.
And
it's not all solved by marriage.
Yes, and there was a court hearing in Utah this week on same-sex parents wanting their names on a birth certificate. This is an interesting issue because in the Utah case, at least, the deal is a married opposite-sex couple has a child with a sperm donor. The married husband is listed as the parent of the child automatically.
Yes.
There is an automatic assumption in the law that the husband in a married couple is the father of the child, no matter what is known about the actual biological parentage of the child. And this is a device in the law that really goes to my understanding of one of the main reasons legal marriage was created in the first place.
Legitimacy of children.
And ownership of children, and ownership of property, and inheritance rights, and all of that was created as a fictional device to bring order to that system. And to give a man the rights over that wife and child. So the legal construct was created. So now along come same-sex couples, and they say, well, if you have a married opposite-sex couple, you make an assumption that the married couple are the parents of the child, and that's how you write the birth certificate. So we just want equal treatment. We're the married parents of the child. We want to be acknowledged as such on the birth certificate. And the right wing goes, whoa, wait a minute. You clearly you aren't both the biological parents of the child. You can't do that. That's ridiculous.
And then they try to force you through a second parent adoption process, which is expensive.
Exactly. But
And
in fact, it's just fascinating to me, the two opposite points of view on this. The right wing sees the opposite-sex couple as needing this legal fiction to promote, to control the ownership of the relationship, and the same-sex couple sees it as a matter of equal rights.
Well, that's why Prince Harry is Prince Charles's son, even though his biological father is James Hewitt, and why Henry VIII, couldn't get his kids outside of marriage in the line of, succession, even though he had a couple of boys outside of it.
But wouldn't be acknowledged because they weren't married.
Right. And God knows who was, as we know from Wolf Hall, who was screwing Anne Boleyn and who those kids were.
It's a mess.
Yes, but it was assumed, because it was born of the Queen, that it was Henry's child.
Man, what a mess.
All right.
Woo!
All right. Walmart, by the way, is being sued for denying spousal health insurance to same-sex spouses. Now, Walmart began offering spousal benefits in 2014, once after the Windsor decision. But this couple that's suing was married in 2004, and they're doing a class action for all legally married employees denied benefits prior to January 1st, 2014. It's a suit from gay and lesbian advocates and defenders.
And they're calling it sex discrimination because as a legally married couple, they would have been acknowledged by Walmart if they were opposite sex, but since they're same sex, they were discriminated against. All right. In Texas, there's a judge who said, all right, I'll marry same-sex couples, but only if you sign a statement acknowledging that I hate your marriage and there will be no photos in the courtroom.
It's just too much. In Nebraska, a state judicial ethics committee says judges and court officials can't refuse gay weddings, and if they do, heterosexual ones.
And there are some clerks and judges around the country, a few of them who are resigning their jobs rather than conduct same-sex weddings, and we applaud them for following through on their oath to uphold the Constitution. And if they can't do it, they're leaving their jobs.
In Dent County, Missouri, they lowered the flags to half-staff to mourn the SCOTUS decision on marriage. We feel sadness, shame, and outright revulsion of the U.S. High Court's stamp of approval on what God speaks of as an abomination. This is a government body, folks. So they got some pushback. And the Dent County Commission, they reversed themselves, and they say they will. And they are adhering to the law there, despite their distaste for this.
Yeah. A little advance in Philadelphia, Margie Winters, who was the married lesbian who was the religion teacher at the Catholic elementary school and was fired, has written to the Pope asking for
More about him later.
yeah, dispensation. But hundreds of parents met to support her. She had originally been ratted out as a married lesbian by one or two parents to the archdiocese. The archdiocese originally said that they weren't involved, that the school was independent, but now the Archbishop of Philadelphia has complimented the school for upholding Catholic standards by firing her.
It's common sense.
But those radical Jesuits at Fordham University, their theology, the chair of their theology department married his partner in the New York Times announcement of their wedding, and the school's fine with it. They say...
we wish them all happiness.
But we're still not allowing any form of birth control to be distributed to any of our students anywhere near this campus.
Okay.
A conservative coalition held a meeting in Dallas to start a new campaign called Real Marriage, One Man, One Woman for Life. They claim they're going to engage in civil disobedience. They're going to target pro-same-sex marriage businesses for attack. Hard to tell how real this is or how much effect they're going to have.
Like the statistic from North Carolina is that out of 672 magistrates, 14 have opted out of performing marriages over this. So this is catching on, I think.
The marriage, not the
marriage,
civil disobedience.
Virgin Islands, the governor signed an executive order allowing same-sex marriages under the Obergefell decision. But in American Samoa, what's going on there? There was like, oh, here it is. They're still reviewing to see if Obergefell, the decision of the Supreme Court in the marriage case, is applicable to them. They have a slightly different status, do they not?
Yeah, we have a question about that too. I think it's time to get to Joe Biden.
Okay.
So Freedom to Marry, Evan Wolfson's organization, held a big celebration last week. 1,000 people?
1,000 plus. Noisy, big. My whole life passed before me.
That's why I didn't go.
Yeah.
To celebrate the marriage decision. And believe me, if I hadn't seen Evan a couple of times here recently, I would have gone. But it was evidently a grand celebration. And one of the main speakers was Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Who Evan used to work for as an intern years ago.
Many years ago, in the mid-'70s, in Biden's Senate office. And Evan told the story here, I think, of how Biden called him immediately when hearing of the Supreme Court decision to congratulate him on his work. So Biden came to this big celebration and spoke to the crowd, and he thanked Evan and talked about what a great guy he was. And we want to show you about 6.5 minutes of his speech. And there are a couple of things to note. One, he talks about how he's always supported us, blah, 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 blah. But he has a little moment in there of, he may have had a political problem.
He voted for DOMA.
Voted for the Defense of Marriage Act.
But he's certainly the guy who brought the president around on this within days of appearing on Meet the Press.
Pushed him over the edge a little.
Yes, it just took a couple of days.
And certainly has been completely on our side and is a great supporter.
This is a much better tape of Joe Biden than the last one we showed during the 2008 campaign when he gave a very rambling answer on gay stuff, which was kind of crazy. But I thought this speech was terrific. I was in the room.
And he also, what I also loved about it is, you'll see this, he talks about Evan sort of putting a spin on human rights, and how Biden used that to sort of get Robert Bork in the Senate hearings on his confirmation.
Well, let's show him the tape.
Okay.
Joe Biden.
I just want you to know that I really do think it is an incredible job that you've all done. Even when Evan was my intern back then, Evan did a great job. This has been a heroic battle, but it's been based on a very simple proposition, best expressed, at least to me, by my dad when I was a 17-year-old kid. My dad was one of those, as the Irish say, the highest compliment you give someone is he was a good man. My dad was a good and decent man. And I learned early on I didn't like digging ditches in the summer with construction crews, so I became a lifeguard. And, but they paid a lot more money. I was in the county system, in the county pool, and they paid more money in the city. And so my dad, on the way to his job in the morning, and this is, if you know anything about, you probably don't, my city of Wilmington, there's a place called Rodney Square, and the buildings surrounding Rodney Square were the DuPont Company, the Hercules Corporation, which was big then, and ICI Americas, and so there were a lot of plain gray suits, and an awful lot of, at 8 o'clock in the morning, an awful lot of men and women hustling off to work. And but the courthouse is in that square. And my dad pulled up to let me run out and get an application for this job in the city, and then I was going to drive him to work and drive myself home. And as we were stopped at the light, two men on the right, very well-dressed men, obviously business people working for either Hercules or DuPont, turned and embraced one another and kissed each other. And they went their separate ways. I'll never forget, I turned and looked at my dad, just looked at him. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, "Joey, they love each other. It's simple. They love They love each other. It's simple." That's what this has been all about from the beginning. It's never been that complicated for me because of the parents who raised me. That's why I didn't have any problem. I had some political problems, but I didn't have any problem. And I didn't have any problem with the president directly and honestly answering that question on Meet the Press that you showed. Now here, no, I don't say that because look, I got involved in public life because of civil rights. This was the civil rights movement of our generation. This is what this decision is as consequential as Brown versus the board. And so, and it's always been, the reason I've been so confident, it's always been a simple proposition. But it hasn't been simple for a lot of you, especially those of you who are older. Pursuing this simple proposition for many of you standing in front of me took courage. It took moral courage, but it took physical courage. Physical courage. As you came out and stood up and made your case, unlike me, you risked a great deal. I risked nothing holding this position I have had for so many years. In 1983, there was a Harvard Law essay making the constitutional case for marriage equality, written by a young man who wrote, and I want to quote, he said, "Human rights illuminate and radiate from the Constitution, shedding light on the central human values of freedom and equality." That was the basis upon which I took on Judge Bork. And no, let me explain, because it's an important proposition. Judge Bork and many conservatives, justices, he was a brilliant man and a brilliant judge and a brilliant professor. But he believed there was no such thing as any unenumerated right in the Constitution, unless it was stated in the Constitution. It did not exist as a constitutionally protected right. And I remember the opening exchange he and I had. I hadn't thought about it till I saw your comments. We started the debate in the opening round, and I said, "Judge Bork, I'm going to characterize your position on constitutional interpretation, and you tell me if I'm wrong." And I said, "You believe all the rights I have as an American, a human being, emanate from the Constitution. And if they are not stated, I do not possess that right." And he said, "That's right." And I said, "Well, I believe I have certain inalienable rights merely because I'm a child of God, just because I exist. The government has given me nothing. Given me nothing. They've just guaranteed to protect what I'm guaranteed as a human being to have. All human rights illuminate and radiate from the Constitution. That's what this is all about. These were not words from an illustrious Supreme Court Chief Justice. These are the words of your institution's founder. These are the words written by Evan Wolfson when he was in law school. Pretty courageous for a 26-year-old kid at Harvard Law School when the future looked so dark and lonely. It took courage, like many of you have demonstrated. And like him, so many of you have done so much for so long. The last 5 or 6 years where I go within the community, I'm being thanked. You don't owe me or Valerie or the president or anybody any thanks. No, you don't. We owe you. It's hard for me to imagine the sense of accomplishment you must feel. Over the years, in their homes, on our staffs, in the front lines of war, in the houses of worship, Jill and I have known, stood with, supported countless gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender Americans who share a love for their partners that up until now was constrained only by social stigma and discriminatory laws. But the work all of you have done, laying the groundwork for the Supreme Court decision, their love, your love, it has been set free. It has been set free like it never has before in America. In fact, because of you, and I mean this sincerely, in my view, if you check the history of the Supreme Court, the country has always been ahead of the court, always been ahead of the court in every major reaffirmation or assertion of a basic human right. In my view, the court's decision was inevitable because of you. The court had no choice, in my view, based on an accurate reading of the Constitution, but it also had no choice because the social mores of the country support the position you've taken. I'll say it again. In the process of this long struggle that began before my father uttered those words to me, they love each other, there was a heavy cost, a heavy price paid by so many who went before. I want you younger people here to understand the shoulders you're standing on. Your courageous efforts not only set you free and the LGBT community free, but it freed millions and millions of straight women and men. It freed them in a way most people, it's human nature, they don't want to speak out against social convention. So many remain silent for fear of being ostracized. You set them free from the stigma that they feared, that they bear, supporting the rights of their lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender brothers, sisters, friends, colleagues, roommates, neighbors. As Valerie and others can tell you, and I think Evan can tell you, I believe from the beginning, not only did this social disapprobation of society keep so many in the LGBT community from coming forward, it also intimidated millions of straight people who didn't have a homophobic bone in their body. But now they're free as well. They didn't have the courage you had, but they are free as well. And by the way, those discussions with your straight friends, those discussions, ask them. They feel liberated and they no longer feel guilty. 20 years ago at a business lunch in this city, if a gay waiter came up with a lisp and said, "What will you have?" and one of the people at the luncheon said, "Well, let me tell you what I'll have," no one would have said anything. Today, that man or woman would not be invited back to lunch. It's a big deal. As I said back in May of 2012, I believe a majority of the American people agreed with me and agreed with you years before this decision was made. But now it's settled. It's settled in law. But as you know better than anyone, although this is a gigantic step toward equality, there are still many more steps that we have to take and so much more to do. You're probably saying, why did Biden talk so much about where the American public is? Because of the next issue I want to mention with you, and I'll only keep you a couple more minutes. Although the freedom to marry, and for that marriage to be recognized in all 50 states is now the law of the land, there are still 32 states where marriage can be recognized in the morning and you can be fired in the afternoon. Just as the courage of gay and lesbian, transgender, bisexual women and men to stand up long ago and say, this is who I am, is what made ordinary Americans realize there's nothing abnormal about this. These are people I know, people I love, people I care about. I believe right now, I don't believe the American people, for that matter, the people in those states, I don't believe they even know it's possible that you can be fired because you are gay or lesbian. And I am absolutely confident that when the people and organizations in this room and the president and I take this fight to the American people, we will win, because all we have to do is let them know what the law allows now. If you think I'm kidding, go to any one of those states when you're on business. Ask at a train station or at an airport or when you're having lunch. Can someone here in this city be fired just because they're gay? I'll lay you 8 to 5. You get an answer, no, that can't happen. They don't even know. But once people realize, this will end as well. So we have to raise the issue up. We have to expose the darkness to justice. As the great Justice Brandeis once said, disinfectant, the best disinfectant is sunlight. So I want you to know, this next door is going to be a hell of a lot easier to push open, as long as we expose to average Americans the injustice that continues to exist. So let's all recommit to shine a blazing light on the ugliness of employment discrimination. It matters not just for the millions of American families, but along with marriage equality, it matters that we use the power of our example to force for global human rights, to be a champion of LGBT rights around the world. This also has a significant foreign policy dimension. Finally, our actions are matching our stated values. So, ladies and gentlemen, the next fight will not take as long. And let me close with a story. I took 3 of my grandchildren to the World Cup, the Women's World Cup Finals in Vancouver. And afterwards, we had the privilege and honor of walking on the field with our team and meeting all the women on the team. We observed 2 remarkable things. One was the incredible athletic prowess of our women's national team that won their 3rd national world title. But 2, and equally as consequential, watched maybe the greatest women's soccer player of all times, Abby Wambach, standing there with a flag in one hand and her arm around her wife giving her a kiss in the other hand. That was reason to celebrate. It was just as normal as countless other times you've seen that happen. Harvey Milk was right. Hope is never silent. So I say in America, justice can never be permanently repressed. It always needs and will be set free. Congratulations. Now shine a new light.
Thank you. Hey, let's get him in as a co-host.
I think we've seen enough of him right now, and that did go on longer than I expected. But that's always true of Joe. But you had a personal encounter with him.
I wasn't going to, go over there. I was covering it as a reporter, not with a camera, just for the Gay City News. And I just wanted to say to him, and there's a picture of me with him, I just wanted to say to him, I'm 61 years old, and he's 72. I had the same experience with my father. Before I came out, him saying something pro-gay in some context, which, very much reassured me and it made life a lot easier for me. So, and he said, no, it's you did it. Okay, all right, get that picture off. It was nice to meet him.
I had nothing but homophobic comments from my parents.
Okay.
Before and after.
And Evan gave credit to everybody, too, had everybody raise their hand for the different things that they did to make everybody feel, as it was, that this was all of your victories out there. And a lot of you did a lot more than people here.
And Biden hasn't quite gotten the memo yet on the fact that it's going to be a comprehensive civil rights bill that will cover not just employment, but housing, public accommodations, federal programs, credit, whatever.
When's that bill coming?
Maybe the last week of July. It's been a little delayed. They're fine-tuning it. This is going to be introduced by Senator Merkley of Oregon and Representative Cicilline of Rhode Island in the House. And stay tuned, but start fighting for that right now, just as the Vice President said.
And marriages have begun in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And a couple of other things.
Wheaton College in the Midwest, one of these top Christian colleges, that had a celibate lesbian chaplain. Now she's decided she's going to stay celibate. But she's not. She's thinking celibacy may not be right for everybody, and she actually supports same-sex marriage. So she is resigning as the chaplain at Wheaton.
You're going to hear about the Oregon bakers getting fined $135,000 for not selling a wedding cake to a lesbian couple. But they were not fined for that. They were fined for causing emotional distress by bringing unwanted media attention, deriding the couple in public statements, and sharing the couple's address and personal contact information publicly. So the women were subjected to threats, and that was what the fine was for, not just about the wedding cake.
And in a reverse situation in Michigan, a guy named Thomas Banks is suing the Ford Motor Company and something called Rapid Global Business Solutions. He was fired for posting a comment online condemning Ford for its support of LGBT people. He was a contract employee for Ford through this other organization. They fired him because he violated their harassment policy. He is suing because he says they violated his religious freedom. I don't think you're practicing your religion by making a comment in an online forum. And if you are harassing employees at Ford, there you go.
I agree. We told you that the Episcopal Church is instituting a liturgy for same-sex weddings. Well, the Diocese of Dallas, Bishop Lambert there joined 19 Episcopal and Anglican bishops in opting out of that.
At Baylor University in Texas, they have announced that they are deleting from their handbook a ban on homosexual acts. They are the largest Baptist university. And Soulforce, you may remember over the years we've had Soulforce people in here. They went on campaigns where they'd go to all these religious colleges and engage with students and get arrested in civil disobedience. And Baylor was a place they'd visited a couple of times, and Baylor has now changed its policy.
And in the District of Columbia, 20 transgender patients were denied treatment at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital because of transgender status. The hospital says gender transition surgery is no longer offered, but anonymous staff there say they had gotten the complaints had been lodged by conservative Catholic officials, and D.C. law requires insurers to cover gender transition.
And also in D.C., a transgender woman was attacked by kids on a metro bus. And in Detroit, a gay man, Henry Hoskins, who's a guy with a disability, was beaten and robbed by a guy he met online. But he and his mother went on TV to talk about this and report this crime.
And the 10th Circuit has rejected the Little Sisters of the Poor RFRA suit, religious freedom suit, against the contraception mandate. The court said there's no substantial burden on them.
A transgender woman in Brooklyn, Lucky Michaels, is suing Bobby's department store. She bought an air conditioner and she's walking out the door with it, and the owner starts pursuing her, thinking, here's this transgender customer, probably stole the air conditioner. And she's going across the street, and he's running after her and yelling at her. And she says, well, I got the receipt right in my pocket. You can grab it or wait till I get across the street. He grabs the air conditioner, throws it at her, broke her jaw, called the cops. The cops arrested the owner.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yes.
Well,
good news.
And in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, a trans woman, 26, was threatened with death outside her own apartment on July the 6th at Kensington and Lefferts Avenues. A group of men hurling racial and homophobic slurs.
And in San Francisco, in the Mission District, there's an LGBT mural that has been vandalized 3 times.
I have a picture of it there.
It's been spray painted twice, and now it's been the victim of an arson attack. You can see all the smoke and fire on the left-hand side there.
We have about 10 or 11 minutes left. Let's tell them what's happening in the world.
Okay.
Germany is still opposed to same-sex marriage. Angela Merkel doesn't want it.
She says she's very religious. But in Hungary, the Liberal Party leader has introduced a same-sex marriage bill. I don't know how much power he has or how far that'll go.
We told you about the problems in Turkey with the gay pride thing. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, in the wake of that crackdown, is calling on authorities to take active measures to combat homophobic and transphobic violence.
Civil unions will start in Chile in October, but people are getting their licenses for civil unions now and setting the dates.
But in Cyprus, the civil union bill has been postponed to September. Apparently our people are going along with that.
Well, a worse bill was proposed, so they need time to sort that out and get back to the original better bill. In Israel, the Knesset, their parliament, has rejected a civil union bill for same-sex couples and any form of civil marriage. That's the fight there, civil versus religious marriage.
In Taiwan, thousands rallied in Taipei for LGBT rights months ahead of elections. A majority there now favors same-sex marriage.
And in Japan, LGBT activists are petitioning for marriage rights there.
But Facebook is blocking an Ethiopian lesbian activist who won't use her real name. She was using it as a social network for organizing.
Yeah, because it's so easy to be out in Ethiopia. In Melbourne, Australia, our viewer and friend activist Tony Pittman has done the math. He says just under 1 billion people in the world, 12.8% of the world, that's just over 1/8, live in jurisdictions that have same-sex marriage equality now.
And Mexico will get them there once they finish up all their stuff, which they're doing. Another state did it. In Australia, they're also going to have a big rally on August 15th at 1 o'clock at the Victorian State Library in Melbourne about this. They're really pushing this because that's when they're going to have that vote, we think, then.
But our friend Mr. Putin in Russia has come up with a new family flag to promote opposite-sex couples. And in Brazil, evangelicals, who are getting more and more powerful in Brazil, overwhelming the Catholic Church, have set up a sin-free website which is really gay-free, and 100,000 people have signed up for that already.
So the Pope has been in Latin America, and Simon Casal, the Paraguay gay group leader, was invited to this civil society roundtable with the Pope among hundreds of other people. So that wasn't very personal, although he thinks it's a step forward.
Well, he said that the Pope was endorsing diversity inclusion, and he took that personally to mean him too. But the Vatican issued a statement saying that he was not referring to LGBT people. But when the Pope was in Bolivia, Felipe Sousa Rodriguez, who used to be a co-executive director of Get Equal, now runs United We Dream, has been running these civil disobediences in LA and at the White House on behalf of LGBT undocumented immigrants. He was there, and he got about 10 other South American activists to all have a copy of this letter that he wanted to present to the Pope, and they all put aside their own issues to make sure that one of them handed this to the Pope, talking about LGBT people and about undocumented immigrants in the United States. So the Pope got the letter directly, and then Felipe's leaving the country, and he's getting on his plane, and the Pope's plane is next to him, and some representative from the Pope comes over to him and says, the Pope hears you, and here's a gift, a rosary from the Pope.
Oh my God. But, you know, I mean, the Pope was making these cryptic statements during his visit to Ecuador, and Marianne Duddy Burke of Dignity said, well, that's a clear signal that he recognizes the damage that church teaching is doing to LGBT families, and it just hasn't gotten there It just hasn't gotten there yet.
No. But here's my favorite international story. Obama is going to Kenya, as you may have heard. So there's a fringe party that has announced that they are going to have a demonstration on the streets of Nairobi just before he gets there. 5,000 naked people.
Totally naked.
So that Obama can see the difference between men and women.
Well, maybe if the National Organization for Marriage had tried that, the Supreme Court would have ruled the other way.
I love that idea.
And by the way, I was very disturbed to read that Alliance Defending Freedom, I didn't realize this, they have this special consultative status at the UN now, and they get to go to all, this has been since 2010.
Do you know how long LGBT groups had to fight for any kind of status at the UN?
And they're going after us right and left.
Oh my God,
but
that's
mostly
terrible.
Right. Okay.
Well, speaking of terrible, AIDS news. Our big story in AIDS news this week is Michael Johnson in St. Charles, Missouri.
Yes.
He's
23 years old.
Yeah. So he's a gay man. He had a lot of sex with other men. Other men objectified him and bragged about having sex with him because he was a star college wrestler. And everybody's having unprotected sex. Well, then one of these guys comes up with HIV. And it turns out that Michael was HIV positive. So everyone has figured out that that's where the transmission occurred. So he's prosecuted for having unprotected sex and not disclosing his HIV status to 6 guys who all had consensual, unprotected sex with him. He was convicted, and he is now sentenced to 30.5 years in prison. The HIV Law and Policy Center called this barbaric in terms of a sentence. You know, they're trying to point out that this is a chronic manageable disease now. I mean, but the point is that you have to protect yourself. Exactly.
I mean, it's not a good thing if somebody lies about their status, if you're in a long-term relationship with them or something. But if you're tricking around, you're not supposed to believe anybody on a first date. You know, seriously,
and you're
folks.
supposed to take responsibility for yourself.
Take protection. You can't always tell. And this is, of course, going to drive people away from testing, because once you get tested and you've got it, and then you don't disclose, you can face 30.5 years in prison.
Terrible. Terrible. He could have been convicted of second-degree murder and gotten a lighter sentence. It's really just shameful and sad. And it's not like he set out to infect people and murder them or anything like that. He was just having sex.
Right. Now, the U.S. House voted overwhelmingly, 344 to 77, to bolster biomedical research, streamline approval of drugs and medical devices, The Senate bill's not likely to pass until much later this year, but this was backed by big pharma, biotechs, and device makers. But consumer groups are now saying, because ACT UP was all about get the drugs online, get them going fast. They're saying that this is based on, if you're going to base things on limited data, it's going to be dangerous for people.
Yeah, it's sort of flipped because 25 years ago, we wanted to, 30 years ago, we wanted to streamline the process. And now Big Pharma has sort of gotten hip to, hey, we can make more money if we can approve these drugs faster and easier. So they're now the ones behind this, and the TAG, other consumer groups, whatever, are saying, wait a minute, we need some actual data on
And
this.
if that's not enough, these bills extend abortion restrictions.
Yeah.
All right.
A couple things coming. Oh, I haven't seen the new documentary, Do I Sound Gay? Have you?
Just seen clips of it online. Looks interesting.
Yeah, it's opened in theaters. It's gotten pretty good reviews.
It's people being self-conscious about, men being self-conscious about their voices if it conveys that they're gay, and how people feel about that.
Countdown to the Caitlyn Jenner series on E! starting July 26th. I Am Kate, and Caitlyn Jenner has signed up with the Tyler Clementi Foundation to do some work with them, and is doing other LGBT work.
We mourn the passing of Roger Rees. We'll get his picture up there. Actor and director, out gay, dead at 71 only. We just saw him in The Visit.
Yeah.
There's a picture of him also when he's older. I just saw him in The Winslow Boy last year. He was on Cheers on TV and movies, and with his husband, Rick Elice, E-L-I-C-E, directed Peter and the Starcatcher, which Rick wrote. So they were a team, and he was a great actor, great actor.
Yeah.
How about that new Harper Lee novel? Never mind. We've got
We just think she looks very much like a lesbian in her younger pictures, but we have no information one way or the other.
By the way, we forgot to mention that Ireland passed an amendment in the Senate to the Employment Equality Act to let lesbian, gay, bisexual employees of religious-run organizations, such as schools and hospitals, be out. And now it goes to the doll.
We have less than a minute to show you some of Blake McIver's new song promoting same-sex marriage. You may remember him as a child on Full House, or now on Bravo's The People's Couch.
This is who we are.
That's his song, and we'll end with that and see you next week.
Pulling past the signpost of this tiny weathered town, the tears welled up so high inside, I thought that I might drown. Everything is different, but it all looks the same. And now you're here beside me, and I'm rid of all my shame. I just hope that they will see what is always